Have you ever wanted something so bad that it's all you think about? And no matter how hard you think about it and you try to achieve it, it just seems like it's constantly out of reach or getting further and further away. And yet other things that you're not prepared for, don't really want, they're coming at you head on, like these tourists that have started to appear. And yet at other times, you find yourself someplace that you didn't really expect to be, like the South Side. Just kidding. I'm just in Valdez for the day. Every time I'm in Valdez, I come out here and I shoot a shot of the harbor. And wouldn't you know it, every time I do that, our friend Ed over at Mountain Mariner is in the shot. Let's see. One of those ships over there is Ed. Well, the ship isn't Ed, but Ed is on one of those ships. He tried to explain it to me which one he's on. I don't know. I couldn't figure it out. Maybe we can get him to point it out for me and I'll point it out in the video. So if you're out there, Ed, I waved. Hopefully you saw me. The one thing that I was waiting for that seemed like it was never going to arrive is spring. This was the winter that just never seemed to end. But spring is finally here. And how do I know that? Because the Nat Shack has returned to Valdez. The Nat Shack is a food truck that sits in a courtyard with a few others, but it happens to be my favorite. My favorite thing to get there is their banh mi crunch wrap. It is so delicious. It is absolutely one of the tastiest fast food type items that I've ever had. And yeah, I can make banh mi at home, but this is a great substitute for homemade banh mi's. But let's head back up to the cabin and I'll talk about some of the things I got going on up there. But on my way out of town, I wanted to show you a couple things. There have been some avalanches along the Richardson Highway, and as you look, just as we're leaving town here, you can see a couple small avalanches that have occurred just recently. These ones are pretty minor in comparison to one further north on the Richardson Highway. This one happened, well, there were a couple of them actually that happened this past winter. As I mentioned in my previous video, this past winter was not as severe as the last couple, but what we got was snow and then warmer temperatures, which caused some melting and then icing and then more snow on top of that. And then as things warmed up, it would create an avalanche. And it brought down several trees along the highway. This, at least one of these avalanches closed the highway for several days. Speaking of avalanches and also tourists, it's kind of funny because a lot of the tourists that come over to this side of the state are actually other Alaskans. And during the winter and early spring months, a lot of those are people who want to go snow machining. What amazes me is that there's snow machining or heli-skiing in areas that are prone to avalanches. Oh, it scares me every time I drive by here and think about the risks that they're taking. As you can see, I avoided having a lake in front of the cabin this year. And that's thanks to all my efforts in trenching. And all that water has been funneled to that side of the cabin. Now that did mean that I had to put a pause on my oil deliveries. Luckily, I don't really need the oil burner this time of the year. But if he were to come in here, most likely over the last couple of weeks, he would have gotten stuck in the area where he pulls to the back of the cabin to fill up the oil tank. But I've not been the only one out here digging trenches. Kenai's helped too. Yeah, I'm watching you. Why are you digging up holes in my yard? Just because I dig trenches doesn't mean you get to. And other signs of spring are popping up all over the place, like these little seedlings that are popping up in some patches of green grass. I'm very happy to start seeing spring arrive. And one other thing that's shown up that hasn't been visible for quite some time is my fire pit. I'm very happy that the fire pit has been uncovered from all the snow. And as I sit here and think about how much I'm looking forward to sitting around the campfire and enjoying the cool summer evenings, I'm also thinking about enjoying that wonderful mountain view behind the cabin. Unfortunately, right now, I can't see those mountains from where I'm sitting. Well, I can kind of, but there are some things that are in my way. One is this pallet of firewood that I stacked next to the fire ring. That really needs to be moved. And then the outhouse is still blocking part of that view. And then behind the outhouse is a big slash pile of downed trees and tree roots that will be taken care of this next fall. It's not safe to burn something like that this time of the year. And in the wintertime, it really is just too wet to burn. So when it's safer in the fall, I'll burn that and get that taken care of. I would be enjoying that fire pit today if it wasn't for the wind. It's just a bit too breezy out here to contend with an open fire at the moment, but it won't be long, and I'll be enjoying cooking over those flames and enjoying the heat as I sit there and enjoy that wonderful mountain view I talked about. And the outhouse hopefully is going to be moved this year. That is one of the things on the project list. So I've already dug the hole right there where those orange markers are, is where I dug the hole for the new outhouse. So eventually, when I decide on what the outhouse is going to be constructed of, it might be a pre-built shed that I buy, or it might be something that I construct myself. But either way, that is on the project list for this year, as well as having the front of the property graded, and the back, to be honest with you, having that properly graded to put in some proper drainage. I'll be putting down a barrier cloth between the ground and a layer of rock that's going to go on top of that. The barrier cloth will prevent the rock from sinking into the mud as I drive over it. And all of this stuff is going to need to be moved so that I can make that happen. It won't be long, and I'll be having the electrician come out to rerun power from the main cabin to the bunkhouse behind me, as well as rewiring the inside of the cabin and taking care of all the faulty power lines that are in there. I mean, I shouldn't say faulty, they're not faulty, but there are some live wires that are a potential safety risk. And so he's going to take care of those things for me, as well as the breaker box that is just, you know, free dangling from the ceiling in the root cellar. Even though I've taken care of most of the drainage issues in the front of the property, for now at least, as I mentioned, not completely, I'm still having to park away from the cabin because you'll see, as I come down the driveway is still flooding and the ground is still incredibly saturated. So if I don't park where I am currently, I'll wind up sinking my tires into the mud and getting stuck. And one other thing is right here in front of the outhouse, it's still a lake. And so I never thought I would be saying this, but something I cannot live without are a good pair of mud boots. Mudders are something that I have become, or have become to rely upon here in Alaska. I would say that these are probably my favorite pair of boots because I can go anywhere in them and I don't have to worry about my feet getting wet. But I will tell you that finding a decent pair of boots here in Alaska, or clothes in general, is not as easy as you would think. The stores here, they don't carry a wide variety of sizes in stock. And so what I recommend if you're coming to Alaska and you need to buy something is that you either buy it before you come up here, or if you go to the store here in Alaska, find the style that you like, know what size shoe you need, and then order it on Amazon or from your other favorite vendor, maybe directly from the manufacturer. Because I have another pair of mud boots in the cabin that I bought last year, and they're really nice, but they're not my size. They're about half a size too small, and they wind up giving me blisters. So I wish that I had just said, okay, these are the ones I want, and then went and bought them online. But speaking of buying things online and having stuff shipped to me, someone had said, you know, that I should get informed delivery for my post office. Well, unfortunately, the post office that my P.O. box is at does not offer that service. And so I'm not able to do that. But it's not been a big deal. As I mentioned, my P.O. box is open. So if you have something that you're wanting to send my way, you can do so. In fact, I kept it open all last year, as I mentioned previously. But if you're sending me something and you're afraid that I might not get it and you don't want to run the risk of it being sent back to you, just send me a private message via email. You can find that in my About page of my homepage of the YouTube channel. And just send me tracking. Let me know when that package should arrive. And that way I don't miss any of your deliveries, any of your packages. But I digress. What I need to be doing right now is I need to collect all of this bit of scrap wood that's on the ground here. A, so that I can get it up out of the water, because the ground right here is still really saturated. But also so that I can clear the way so I can stack the remainder of that cord of wood that was dropped off earlier this winter and get that put in the woodshed. Those are my first two priorities. And so I'm starting, you know, just with the kindling, and then all these other smaller, sorry about that, smaller bits are going to just go into this trash can. This I'll use for tinder, for lighting my fire. And you know, that's something else that I can't live without here is fire. So having good dry wood has been essential for survival here. As I mentioned, I do have an oil burner, but I do love my wood stove. Sorry, that's really loud. It'll get quieter as I go. But the wood stove is also going to be replaced this year, I hope. Fingers crossed. Though it's not as high of a priority to me as getting some other things done. As I mentioned, the driveway and getting the back of the property properly graded. Those are more important to me right now than the wood stove is. The wood stove I have inside is functional. It's just not preferred, is really what it boils down to. So, you know, one other thing that I have become very dependent upon here in Alaska, and I hate to say it, but are mouse traps. So I'm probably going to come across some evidence of mice as I'm digging through this pile of wood here. But over the course of the winter, my friend, the ermine, has done a great job of keeping the mice out of the cabin. And I thought that maybe the ermine had been eaten by an owl recently, because I've had a rash of mice coming back into the cabin over the last week. Even though last week he was leaving me visual clues that he was still around. And I realized that it's that time of the year that the mice are out and about. They're out of hibernation, but also that the snow has gone away so much that their entry points are now available to them. But where they're coming into the cabin at is on the second floor. They're not coming in on ground level. So I don't think the snow was really the issue. And that's what made me think of the ermine might have gone away. Except for this fact that this morning, the ermine is what woke me up out of my sleep. And I mentioned the owls. Over the last couple days, the nighttime air has just been filled with the sound of boreal owls, a saw-whet owl, I believe it's called, and also those same coyotes. And as I mentioned last week, with the flies being the precursors to the mosquitoes, well, the flies are starting to go away and the mosquitoes are here, unfortunately. I wish that I had a really good way of keeping the mosquitoes at bay. I did buy a fogger this last year, a big industrial type fogger, which I may or may not use. I'm not real big on pesticides. I don't want to inhale them myself, and I don't want Kenai around them. Even though they say they're safe for your pet, I don't know about that. So last year, I did a whole bunch of things to prevent mosquitoes. I don't think that the dunks, the mosquito baits that I put around in buckets around the property, I don't think that really did anything. And part of the reason for that is that there is just way too much standing water and tall grasses around the property. There's no way that I can eradicate those issues because there's ponds that surround my property and the forest. You know, there's a bunch of tall shrubbery and grass back in there. So that's not going to do me any favors. But the mosquito repellent, which I need to pull out, I have it sitting in the car. I need to get it out and actually put some on. The mosquito repellent that I made last year, I swear by it, it works. I'll leave a link to that video at the end of this one. And also, something else that worked really well for me last year were the mosquito repellent coils. And so I will be using those. I noticed that you'll see stores here in Alaska that they'll have one of those set right outside the front door of their building. So I'll probably do that, get a little coffee can so that, you know, the wind can't pick up the ash from it and blow it around, and just set one of those outside each one of the doors so that hopefully that keeps the mosquitoes from coming in. And then I have a couple different bug zappers that I'll be hanging up as well. But the mosquitoes are definitely an issue here. That is something that you just cannot avoid. And I know, you know, there's other things that I could be doing to prevent the mosquitoes. I have a mosquito net that I wear. Just don't want to wear it on camera because then you can't see me. And it's kind of an annoyance too. But one of the other things is the mosquito magnet, which is a big machine that attracts the mosquitoes into it. And it can take in like 10,000 mosquitoes at a time. It's a big investment, and a lot of times they have really bad reviews. So I don't know that I'll ever invest in mosquito repellent. But whatever I do, I need to start now, because within the last couple of days, like I said, the mosquitoes have shown their ugly little faces. Well, I got a trash can full, but the ground is actually still frozen, as you can see by this ice right here. And there is something taking place here. I don't know if that's really a mouse nest or what, but yeah, pretty creepy. Well, I think I'm gonna have to let that sit in the sun a bit longer and let it thaw out, because I wasn't able to actually pull up a whole lot of that. Only the top layer is really accessible. Everything else is still pretty much frozen to the ground. So I guess I need to find a different project to work on today. I would work in the garden, but as you can see behind me, while the beds are clear of snow, the access to get into the garden area really isn't. Now, granted, I could go through the Arctic entry and get in there and clean out those garden beds. I need to get them prepped because I need to start planting some things. You know, there are some things that I could put in the ground right now, like my peas and beets and carrots and things like that, things that are cold hardy. Though I never did restart my seeds after I killed them all off. So I'm just gonna buy plants this year. Sometimes you have to make sacrifices where you're not willing to fix your mistakes. And that's my circumstance this year. But I would like to add some more soil to those beds. Last year was the first year that these beds were used, and all the soil has compacted about 4 inches. And so I'd like to bring in some new topsoil and compost, top those beds off before planting anything in them. So I'm not going to plant anything in there today. though I would really like to. But like I said, maybe my next step is to get in there and just clean those beds up and get them ready for that soil. Oh, I have some things coming back up. At least I hope they're vegetables and not weeds. So I've noticed in that corner of the bed and right below the camera, I have what I'm hoping are strawberry plants, and not the false strawberries that I showed last week. Only time will tell if it is or it isn't. But I am curious about what I see sprouting in here. And of course, I'm dumping a bunch of radish seed as I go along. Maybe I'll just try to cover that up and see if it'll actually sprout me some radishes while it's still cool enough outside and not too cool. So I was going to do a big project for my channel members and put together a whole list of plants and their companion plants and everything you need to know about growing everything under the sun as far as a vegetable garden is concerned, right? Like what grow zone, what temperatures that can you transplant it out at? Should it be planted directly or should it be, you know, transplanted? You name it. And I stopped working on that project. So apologies to all of my channel members, but I stopped for a couple reasons. One is I stopped because it took me an hour to do one plant. And so it would almost take me a year to finish that project. And really it should be done in book form and not a PDF like I was gonna give it to everybody in. And the other reason I stopped is because I would need to basically cite all my sources. And yeah, it was just, I was basically doing a lot of research and pulling from as many, you know, direct sources as I could, as opposed to getting misinformation from who now knows what. But the other thing is, I'm not a master gardener. I'm a hobby gardener. I'm a hobby gardenist. And I don't want to misdirect anybody and stuff. And so I apologize. But in all of my research, the point of what I'm talking about here is in all of my research, one of the things that I found is some of the things that I planted in my garden aren't actually even allowed in Alaska. So before you bring any seeds up with you to Alaska, as I mentioned previously, make sure you know what you're bringing so that you don't bring in something that's technically illegal or invasive and wind up creating more harm than good. So I won't tell you what I planted that I shouldn't have. We'll see if you can figure it out by looking at what I planted last year. Anyhow, back to cleaning up this bed I go. As you can see, the snow is melting finally in the back of the property as well, and things are starting to dry up just in time for the rain clouds to come. Usually that's where, well, not usually, that is where, oh, you can't even see me. That's fantastic. As I sit here and I look in the direction of the mountains, I wish I could see them from here, but unfortunately, I need to move that wood stack that you cannot see. And one puppy who has decided to lay in a mud puddle. Yeah, you dug that dirt bed. You did that. Looks like I'm growing puppy again this year. Oh my gosh, strawberry plant growing. Yeah. Sorry, I got distracted by a strawberry plant, which I'm very happy to see. Collect my thoughts. There's a plane going overhead. Something I don't hear often is a large commercial plane, and that's what this sounds like. Whether you've contributed through a YouTube membership, Patreon, PayPal, or you've donated to the channel in other ways, your support means a lot to me. So with that being said, that concludes today's video. I want to thank you for watching and joining me today. As always, stay safe and take care until the next time, and I'll see you then.